Meet Joel Salatin. He's an author, public speaker, and a self-proclaimed Christian, libertarian, environmentalist, capitalist who is known and celebrated around the world simply as the Lunatic Farmer.
Oh, it's like it's alive.
It is alive.
Joel may very well be the most famous farmer in the world. He's even testified before Congress.
Mr. Salatin?
The germination tray.
His farm, located in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, is named Polyface, the farm of many faces. Known for their innovative farming practices, Joel and his family have been revolutionizing agriculture and proving naysayers wrong since 1961. Polyface's methods involve the disregarding of conventional farming, instead working with nature, not against it. You see, Polyface utilizes a diverse mobile system of rotational animal husbandry, all of which work in symbiosis to form a self-sustaining and perpetual ecosystem of abundance. They raise cattle, pastured meat chickens, egg layers, pastured pigs, turkeys, even rabbits. Joel has managed to inspire droves of people around the world to embrace self-sufficiency, to make improved dietary choices, all while also promoting sustainable, environmentally positive farming practices. Joel has been a longtime source of inspiration for Melissa and I, and we were so honored to get to speak with him on this episode of the podcast. We want to thank you for being here, watching, and listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This is New World, Old Soul, and without any further ado, here's our conversation with Joel Salatin. Mr. Joel Salatin, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well.
Can you gave a speech, a talk earlier today about legacy, homestead legacy. Can you give us a little background as to how it is that you became to Polyface becoming such a mecca for modern day agriculture and innovation?
Yeah, well, the story, really, it starts with my grandfather, who was a charter subscriber to Rodale's Organic Gardening and Farming magazine in 1945, something like that, when it first came out. And a lot of people don't realize the nation went through quite an upheaval after World War II, whether we were going to go chemical or biological in agriculture. And of course, we know where the nation went. It went chemical. But there were a lot of people, Louis Bromfield, Ed Faulkner, Robert Rodale. There were many people at the time who balked and went the biological approach. That was my grandfather. So my dad got that kind of non-chemical approach from him, and wanted a farm, and Midwestern, want a farm, no land, no money. So he took a job after World War II. He flew in the Navy, and took a job with Texas Oil Company as a bilingual accountant in Venezuela, and it was a pretty high-paying job at that time, 1947, 48, 49, and in 7 years was able to save enough money to buy a 1,000-acre farm in the Venezuelan highlands. And we began raising chickens. And very quickly, our chickens were cleaner than the indigenous birds that were in very unsanitary conditions. And so in no time, he cornered the local chicken market. This is before, supermarkets and anything. And so the way the commerce went, vendors would come and buy chickens from the farmers who, how Latin American markets are. And they'd buy chickens and they would check their beaks for nasal drip, for snot, indicating kind of a subtherapeutic pneumonia kind of situation. This is the tropics. Mm-hmm. And so our chickens were real dry. And so in no time, Dad cornered the market because our chickens were better. Right. And of course, the locals, instead of asking how we did that, they accused us of being witches and practicing voodoo because, that's the only way you could do this. Voodoo. And so when a junta broke out in 1959 of Pettis and Menace, when there's anarchy, it gives license or opportunity for scores to be settled that would never be settled otherwise. And we were on the losing end of that score being settled. Basically, the machine guns came in the front door as we fled the back door, and we lost everything, and came back to the States Easter Sunday, 1961, and looked at farms in a kind of a day's drive from Washington D.C. because Dad was hoping to go back. He was hoping things would settle, then we'd be able to go back, and he wanted to be within D.C. within a day's drive of D.C. at that time, to be able to get to the embassy, get paperwork done, and get back on the farm. Well, that never happened. But that's why we ended up in Virginia and not in the Midwest where all our cousins were. And found the cheapest gullied rock pile that there was available and purchased that. And Dad set about how do we make a living on this farm? And all the advice was, chemical fertilizer, plant corn, borrow more money to build silos, put in feedlots, all that stuff. But, being an economist and an accountant, he viewed chemical farming as a drug addiction. Mm-hmm. It gets more expensive every year. You're on this treadmill, and you're trying to out compete whatever, nature's, you're trying to out abuse nature faster than nature can respond to your abuse.
Yeah, because it adapts, and then you have to have something stronger and stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. It gets more expensive. It gets more volatile or aggressive. And so he didn't go with all that advice, but started looking at alternatives, and learned about grazing, controlled grazing. So he invented an electric fence system. This is the early '60s. And then the thing was, how do we plug all the leaks, like manure and things like that? So he started by 1969, we had a great big shade mobile that we could move around. And that allowed us to put the manure like a portable shade tree.
Right.
And then he got enamored of mobile infrastructure. And so I started my chickens when I was 10. That would have been 1967. After a couple of years, the chicken business grew, and I had the proverbial stationary house with a dirt chicken yard. Mm-hmm. So what are we going to do? And so we had these portable shelters that hadn't worked for rabbits, because rabbits dig and you can't hatch them. And so we had tried that for a couple of years and couldn't make it work. So, farmers, we don't throw away anything.
Right.
So we pulled those old rabbit pens up in the rafters of the shed, and Dad said, well, hey, why don't you just pull those rabbit shelters down? We'll put chickens in them.
Yeah. And
so that's what we did. And that's how our chicken pastured poultry was born.
Changed and evolved over time.
It was the adaptation of that infrastructure. And so then we're going along. I'm selling eggs. We started selling at a local curb market, which was a Depression era leftover kind of direct marketing, a precursor of today's farmers markets. But the thing was, it enjoyed all these wonderful inspection exemptions. Mm-hmm. We could butcher beef in the meadow and cut it up and sell with no inspection, all these things. So that gave us an in. So this is 72 to 79. And I've always said we were about 15 years ahead of the movement, and so then when I went to college, nobody in the family was wanting to take that over, and so we shut that stand down, and then it was gone by the time I got back from college. So I'm thinking, how do I get back on the farm, full time, and so, I went to work in town, the typical, get a job and live on the farm and do that kind of as a sideline. But, you get your income somewhere else. Teresa and I got married. We made an apartment in the farmhouse so we could live very cheaply. We have a big garden. She would can, she still does, cans like 800 quarts of stuff a summer. And our grocery store is in the basement where all the we did everything from sauerkraut to applesauce to pickled beets and green beans and squash and all this stuff. And we had our own wood. Then we had, the Arab oil embargo, fuel started to spike. So we had a wood stove, went to all wood heat. We had plenty of wood. So our living expenses were really low. I remember at the time we were married and we were living on $300 a month. Amazing. Which is pretty cheap.
Yeah.
Okay. And so by living that cheaply, we were able to save half of our paychecks.
Yes.
And we put that in the bank. And within just 2 years, we had enough that we could live on for a year. And I said, you know what? Let's jump.
Yeah.
And so September 24, 1982, I came back to the farm full time. We had 1 year's nest egg. And I thought it would run out for sure, that I'd have to go back to work off farm. But as it turned out, that little thing just kept on going. So many of our expenses dropped so low. Like instead of filling the car gas tank once a week, once a month. Those are big savings.
It is.
And I was there for every calf that was born. So suddenly a cow having a problem, I could help her calve, and we didn't lose the calf. I call that slippage.
Right.
I was there for when the green beans needed to be weeded, not, I'll try to get this crammed in on a weekend when I'm home. And by that time, the weeds are as big as the green beans. And, you've had still timeliness is everything, strawberry patch, whatever. I mean, all that timeliness. How do you get the daughters of the strawberries, just right? Well, you gotta be there every day, when the runners are going, to try to get them placed exactly right. And so anyway, all that to say, in 3 years, that nest egg just kind of eased off. And I did do a couple of odd jobs. I helped a guy build a fence through woods. He was gonna hire a big commercial fence contractor. And they were gonna have to cut this big swath through the woods in order to get their equipment in there to build the fence. I looked at it and said, I could dig these post holes by hand. I won't have to cut a tree at all. We'll just put that fence right down through here and you won't have any mess and all that. And so I did it for, a quarter cheaper than a commercial outfit would, but it gave us, it was a nice $2,000 cash job. When you're living on $300 a month, a $200 cash job is a pretty big deal. And I helped another guy plant trees for a couple of years in the spring. He was in a tree planting business. And so, did a couple little things. But anyway, in the third year, we were over the hump. Right. We'd established a brand. We were selling to local customers. We were doing the chickens, selling beef, chickens, eggs. And it was small, but we didn't have very many expenses. Right. And so we were able to make it work.
Yeah. Perseverance.
I don't even remember I've listened to so many of your different speeches and things that have been put on YouTube. I don't remember which one it was, but when we were thinking about making the leap ourselves, I remember you saying, well, my wife and I were really employable, and we figured if it comes down to it, we can go work wherever. And I was thinking, yeah, we're employable. Like, we can go work at Home Depot or something, but we'll give ourselves.
We weren't going to die.
Yeah, that was my thing. We're not going to die.
Yeah. Well, they call it the golden change,
Yes,
the golden change, that paycheck.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, when we did that, every one of our friends, everyone, college buddies, everybody thought we were stupid, throwing our lives away, blah, 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 whatever. But I realized that we were so employable because we were conscientious. Mm-hmm. We had brains. We gave 110% to anything we did. And I wasn't afraid to do anything. I wasn't afraid to push a wheelbarrow, tote bricks, wash dishes.
Whatever it takes.
And the truth is that the labor bar in America right now is so low that if you show up on time or maybe a few minutes early and you put in a good day's work and ask the boss, how much can I do? Not what's the minimum requirement. And you maybe stay a couple minutes longer and you're not spending the day asking, when can I go home? You don't have to go far to find something.
Right. Yeah,
if you're not, if you're not, saying, well, I have to have this perfect, whatever white collar IT thing or whatever. But if you're willing to do anything, you can get by.
Thrive, absolutely. It's sad that seems to be such a rarity in today's day and age, where it is so difficult to find people who are not only willing to make such a leap, but even in the case of employment, like you said, what do you attribute that drawback to, that downfall? Not to be overly dramatic about it, but why do you think it is that it's so difficult to find people that are willing to take on a risk and or just devote themselves to a job or a task?
I think it's part of our whole moral decline in our country.
Agreed.
We in general, I think people lack purpose, and they just view a job as a job. There's no sacredness to it. There's no purpose, it's just a paycheck so you can go live it up on a weekend or blow it or go on a Caribbean cruise or whatever. And so I think it's up to each of us to figure out how to instill sacredness into our vocation, whatever it is. And I think almost all vocations have a sacred space, but it's up to us to figure out, where that sacred space is. And I mean, you can, if you have fire in the belly and you think it's a sacred, righteous thing to do, then you throw yourself into it with a little more gusto than if it's just whatever, putting in time so I can live it up on the weekend.
Yeah. You do. I think a lot of times that 9 to 5, really, you end up building this little prison around yourself, and then the mortgage and the car payments and trying to keep up, and the kids and every activity. It's so expensive. And you're literally just working to try to facilitate this life that you don't even get to enjoy.
Yeah, it's a rat race. It's a treadmill.
Yeah.
And you can't get off. And of course, a lot of that partly is created because people are living above their means.
Yes.
You're buying a car you can't afford. You're buying a house you can't afford. Going on vacations you can't afford. You're eating out in restaurants you can't afford. And so, I just stand on the shoulders of greatness, I feel like, because our family for now a couple of generations has lived a little bit under its means.
Yes.
And that's how families and tribes historically gained wealth, was each generation living a little bit below its means. In America, for too long now, too many decades, we've been living a little bit above our means, and that just continues. People talk about the government this, government that. Well, look at consumer debt.
Yes.
I mean, the government just reflects what consumer debt is. And so, I've actually done some articles on what if everybody spent money like me? What would we not have? And it's amazing how many things we would not have. There would be no breakfast cereal in the grocery store. There would be no convenience foods, no Hot Pockets, no Lunchables, no squeezable Velveeta cheese. There'd be no Las Vegas.
Las Vegas gone.
Yeah, Las
that
Vegas
big ball,
is gone. Yeah,
get rid of it.
It's just gone. And there's no virtually no celebrity culture. I'm not saying there wouldn't be any movies or anything like that, but it would be minuscule, compared to where it is.
Yeah.
So anyway, I won't belabor all that, but fashion and well, the pride of the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. This is the draw.
Yes.
And people then get in over their heads, and it's not good.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, it's not really glamorous to want to be a farmer and grow food and everything. Well, it's actually becoming more trendy now, which is funny. It's funny to watch it become trendy with social media and everything like that.
Are you aware of that?
Like, do you
have that social media
glamorous?
awareness? Yeah, that it's kind of becoming
No, I don't
trendy.
do anything on social media.
You're very trendy, Joel. Very trendy. It's so funny because when
So you're saying Kim Kardashian eat your heart out?
I'm saying you're like above her because you grow food and you can make strawberries and chicken, and I don't think she can do that. So it's funny because when we moved to Idaho, we were talking to somebody that we had just met at a barbecue, and he was talking about, I have these sheep and I've been like moving them around. And we're like, oh, like Joel Salatin. And he's like,
yes,
Joel Salatin. And like, we both just lit up like, yes, we both follow Joel Salatin. It was this bonding moment of like, you're cool. And then we just talked the whole barbecue. Like, we got something in common with this guy over here.
Yeah.
He's aware. Like, so it was really neat.
What is that like for you? Because speaking of celebrity, you have kind of taken on the role of being somewhat of a celebrity. We've been walking around with you all day, and you've got people coming up to you in droves saying, hey, whether they be thanking you, or just you are in the public eye, the limelight for what it is that you've always done. What is that like?
Well, it's about a little bit like I call it our Cinderella moment. We've been in the ashes all of our life, kind of marginalized, and they're just he's just a farmer, and he's not even a cool farmer because he doesn't use vaccines and chemicals, and and have feedlots and stink and all this stuff that you're supposed to have, and to suddenly wake up one day and be invited to the ball is really, I mean, we literally we feel like Cinderella often. We've been in the shadows for so long, both culturally and certainly in agriculture.
Yes.
Banished to the edges because we don't do what Farm Bureau Federation says you're supposed to do, and then all of a sudden to wake up and this especially this homestead tsunami is just an incredible movement. I mean, it is exploding, and it was nascent heading up to 2019, 18, 19, but man, 2020 just sent it into orbit.
Yeah, it did.
When the store shelves went empty,
Yep.
and people panicked. They absolutely panicked. And you know, I hope we don't recover from that. I mean, I want that memory to be indelibly put on in our heads, so that I mean, I don't want us to continue to be panicked, but I want the culture, I want the wake up call to actually wake up.
Yeah, this can happen again.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, it can happen again.
Yeah, I think it was good for our young people to experience that, to walk into a grocery store and look around and think, look how fast. And we were living over by Portland, and those shelves were empty in 24 hours. And when we walked in there, it looked like something out of a zombie apocalypse.
Yes.
And our kids were scared. And I was like, guys, we've got 500 jars of food. We've got a massive garden. It's spring. Like, we're fine.
Right,
And
exactly. Yeah,
we didn't have toilet paper.
Teresa said, I mean, she'd gone to the store to get something. She said, "You won't believe, you know," and so she hauled me into, you know, whatever Kroger's, you know, said, "Look at this," and I was, what do they call it, gobsmacked or whatever, you know. I mean, I had never seen anything like this in my life. Not even when a blizzard is coming is it like that. I mean, it's picked over, and you know, people kind of flood and they get stuff. But man, this was, and it was ongoing. It was day after day after day after day. And our farm store, we sold in 6 weeks, we sold 6 months worth of inventory.
Wow.
I mean, and it was such a blessing because we lost 50 restaurants.
Oh, wow.
So in that year, we lost almost $1 million worth of income.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that. You know, look, if you didn't have a drive-up window, you were out of business, basically. And we don't serve restaurants that have drive-up windows. We serve sit-down family, you know, real restaurants. And so they just went down like flies. In a week, they were gone. And all this, but what happened was then the retail end, the consumer end, then started coming out to the farm. And I don't know how many people we had. I talked to them, and they come in the store and said, "Man, I'd be the last person in the world to ever go to a farm and buy food. But here I am, because this is where the food is." Yeah. It was really, really special. Yeah. To be able to go through that. And yeah, I hope we don't forget it soon. I mean, too. Now, you know, a lot of people have, you know, fallen right back into the routine but I think some real strides were made. And that's the silver lining of the catastrophe. I think some real strides were made in many areas.
Yeah, I think people became more aware, for sure. And just knowing that it was really scary for a lot of people to not be able to have food or whatever they needed for their kids. And so you see a lot more families now, let's rip out this grass and let's plant a garden. And we had a lot of people coming in getting breeder rabbits from us. Like, maybe we'll keep a trio just in case. They'll be pets, but if we need to breed them, we can.
Well, 1 million, and this is the official number, 1 million backyard flocks of laying chickens started in 2020.
Wow.
1 million. And in September 2020, the number one food Googled, you know, a search engine in food search was sourdough starter.
Sourdough became huge.
Oh, huge.
I can't get it to rise. Mine's all like a doorstop. I keep cheating and adding yeast.
Yeah.
I gotta watch some videos on that.
Yeah. You could probably learn that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so then you had Putin invaded Ukraine in the next, in 2021, and suddenly fertilizer jumped 400%. All these farmers are lamenting, "Oh no, I can't afford fertilizer. I can't afford." You know, and then you had the European farmer protests, Netherlands and Spain and Belgium and Germany, and you started seeing all that going on, and then of course, you know, you got Israel and Gaza, and there's the way I describe it is, have you ever had a wasp nest on the back porch? You know, a back porch, right? Yeah. And you know, it's just about the size of a softball, you know, wasp nest, and you go in and out and in and out, and the wasps are always they're just sitting there. I mean, occasionally you see one fly off and come back, but they're just chilling out, you know, they're not doing anything. Well, one day you decide, let's clean off the back porch. And so you're out there and you're cleaning off the back porch, and you accidentally hit the rafter that the nest is on with like the broom handle. You bang it. And the bees don't come after you, but suddenly they're like, ready to go. They're up on their feet and their wings are kind of out a little bit. Something like an aircraft carrier with the planes ready to take off. Okay. And that's what I feel like the world is like right now.
Right.
The world is like that disturbed beehives. They don't know where the broom handle is. They don't know where they're going or where the disturbance came from. But I'm nervous. I'm nervous. I'm ready, and we kind of have that. I just feel like that's the emotional whatever, the spirit in most of the world right now.
Right.
And so when that happens, here's the thing: if there's going to be disturbance, back to the wasp nest, you don't want to be the one that can't fly.
Yeah.
If there's going to be disturbance, there's one thing you don't want to be, and that's sick.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the one back in the bed saying, "Hey, everybody, as you run out the front door, can you carry me with you?"
Right.
That's not the person you want to be. So that is driving. That's driving not only food security and stability, but food quality. Mm-hmm. And so people are starting to realize, this health thing is real, and I'd better live on something worth eating, not nachos and Cheetos, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing for people to come to that point, and I think this whole kind of is driving that. It's good.
Yeah, it's also really good for people to learn how to do this stuff before the disasters hit.
Prepare now.
Because I think with COVID, a lot of people went, "Oh no, this was so scary," and then everyone's kind of been, not everybody, but a lot of people have been lulled back into that state
that's
of
right.
Everything's fine.
We have
back
short
to
memories,
the city.
don't we? We have short memories.
Complacency is a bear.
And it's like, now is the time to start learning. Like, so when someone's like, "Oh, I'm going to grab a trio, and if I need them," I'm like, "No, start breeding them now. You need to learn to process before you need to learn to process."
Right.
Like, you have to be able to do that.
I had the most fascinating conversation some time ago. It's been a year ago now, but I had two special forces career guys call me on a conference call with their wives. They were 20-year career guys, special forces. I don't know if they were Navy SEALs or Rangers, but anyway, they were elite. Mm-hmm. And they'd been in there for 20 years, and they were getting ready to get out at the 20-year. And they were convinced that things are going down. Okay, whatever that means.
What do they know?
Yeah, right. Things are going down. And they told me, they said, we know stuff that we can't begin to tell you. All right, well, that's fine. And so we had this conversation about, so what do you do? If things are going down, what do you do? And so it was a far-ranging conversation, and it was fascinating for me to converse with these guys whose lives have been in what ifs, in dealing with strategies for what if, contingency plans. And to cut to the chase, the upshot of the conversation was there's two ways to respond to the wheels falling off. One, you can either go to Wyoming and Idaho, live in a cave, and be a mountain man hermit. Mm-hmm. Okay.
We chose option A.
We chose A.
Okay. Or you can find community and build relationships with people who know how to grow things, fix things, and build things, and develop some of those skills yourself. Yes. So you're living in community. So it's kind of the mountain man, cave, hermit deal versus the community deal. And what was fascinating, the most fascinating thing about the conversation was when everybody realized both of those are viable. Let's agree both of those are viable.
Yes.
But the common thing of the two is they take time.
Yeah, they do.
You can go live in a cave and be a mountain man, but you've got to learn how to butcher and set traps and make a teepee and fire and all that. Yeah. Well, you don't do that in a day.
No.
Just like you don't build community in a day. You have to, it takes time to build relationships and trust and eclectic skill sets and all those kinds of things. And so the most interesting thing about the conversation for me was, as it ended with this, well, what's the common thing? Well, you got to start yesterday. And you can't wait until the catastrophe. You can't wait until the store shelves are empty to decide, I wonder if we should start canning. No, you got to have the pantry. You got to have the larder there. You got to have the pantry full.
Yeah.
And the gal on our team who handles our neighborhood drop points has just invented a new term, and I'm really excited about it. She's invented. She's made up a word called not patriot but patriot. What we want are patriots.
Yeah.
The pantry. We're patriots of a pantry. Yeah. Patriot. Anyway.
I love that.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah. When we built our house, we built a pantry room. And people are like, what do you need that big old pantry for? You could have put another bedroom in for your kids. I'm like, no, they can bunk. This is the pantry. This is where survival happens.
Yeah.
The freeze dryer lives here, and this is where we're gonna store stuff. But I think, a lot of people just wait till the last minute, and where, like, even with gardening, you better know how to save that seed, because if you plant a big, beautiful garden, something happens in the fall or into the winter, where are you getting next to your seed? Like, you need to know how to do all of these things.
Yeah.
So.
Or at least have friends that are saving seeds, or
have a community.
Have a community, have a direct, there are lots of seed savers around.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of little seed co-op networks and stuff. Well, hook up with those.
Yeah.
If you're depending on Tractor Supply for your seeds, you're probably fairly vulnerable.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to diss Tractor Supply. I'm just saying that is part of that very, very fragile system.
Yeah, it's a
Reliance
house of cards.
is vulnerability.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If someone just flicks that bottom card, the whole system crumbles, and now it's just up to the people. And I think there could be a lot of panic in that. So yeah, it's definitely weird. So one thing that I think was really beautiful, I was listening to your talk with Nick Freitas, and you were talking about your dad and how he never quite got over not getting back to Venezuela. Do you ever think about what life would be like if he had gotten his dream?
Yeah, I actually do, because as you can imagine, at the time, this was just a devastating tragedy.
Yeah.
I mean, he was there for 12 years. Mom was there for 10. And I mean, he spoke Spanish like a native. In fact, I spoke Spanish before English. Okay. And so this was the ultimate devastation.
Yeah.
Looking back now, after Chavez, Maduro, and these guys, we realized, wow, if we had stayed and been successful, we probably would have been, because Dad was a genius, and he had these two boys coming on, and then my sister, and so we would have. Let's assume that we would have been very successful on that place. We would have lost it not in its embryonic state, but we would have lost it. It would have been expropriated, as a big outfit.
Yeah.
And of course, I've now since run into numerous, large scale Venezuelan. I mean, it is such a rich resource country, and to realize that a lot of people there are starving. They don't get food. And I mean, there is no reason for a place that is as rich in resource as Venezuela is, with as much rain and year-round growing and pastures and bananas and pineapples and papayas and cassava, to be starving.
Yeah.
And so now, as a family, we view it as a blessing. God got us out.
Yes.
Right.
God got us out in the right timing, right at the beginning, before we were really doing anything big.
Yeah.
And look at what it became. It's amazing.
Yeah. I wouldn't have met my wife. I mean, we can now look back and say,
Sure.
well, we wouldn't have been. And truly, and then even to land where we did, where we're 3 hours from Washington, D.C., it has put me in an incredibly strategic place, so I can go to congressional hearings if a congressman, and I've done that a couple of times.
Yes.
Congressman calls me, yes, I can get there. If I lived in California or Idaho or someplace whatever west of the Mississippi, or goodness, even west of Virginia, it would be much more difficult to get there. But my 3 hours, I can just jump in the car. I can be in D.C. I can go be at things in the capital of the country. And so yeah, we just look at things and realize, God was directing and moving us, even though we didn't see it all. In hindsight, we absolutely see it.
God had a plan.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, it's so beautiful how some of those unanswered prayers are just things that feel like everything's falling apart, but it's actually God just building up exactly where you're supposed to be. We want to take a quick moment to thank the sponsor of today's episode, Delete Me, and share with you guys how awesome Delete Me has been for our online security and privacy.
Yeah, we started using Delete Me last summer in hopes of getting some of our personal information removed from the internet. We've been telling you guys about it since then. It's been really impressive, not only how much of our personal information they've been able to find, but also delete on our behalf.
Something that we never knew before Delete Me is there are data brokers out there collecting huge amounts of all of our personal identifiable information. They will use government sites, public information sites, and even your own social media. They will collect your social security number, your birth date, your past addresses, and even your family members. They then package it all up, license it, sell it to other data brokers, and even scammers.
In just the last 9 months, Delete Me has found hundreds of different data brokers with our personal information, and their privacy experts took it from there. They've removed over 700 listings with our personal data, and the best part is they'll continue to scan the web to make sure our info doesn't pop up again. We've mentioned this to you guys previously, but we signed up for the family plan. That way all of our family members are protected under one Delete Me plan. This can be particularly important for your elderly family members, as unfortunately, they are so oftentimes a target for these scammers.
To give Delete Me a try for yourself and take the very first steps towards protecting your own online identity, just click the link below or go to joindeleteme.com/GSL, and remember to use our code GSL to get 20% off all consumer plans.
Big thanks to Delete Me for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Let's go back to our conversation.
Did your dad get to see what it became?
Dad, that's one of my biggest, I think about it often, how tickled he would be at what. So he was, so I left, I came back to the farm full time September 24, 1982. That was a big deal. And shortly after that, Dad became ill with prostate cancer, and I think it was brought on by never getting over Venezuela. He never got over it. He loved that place. He loved the country. He loved the people. He loved the language. He just completely embraced that culture, and he never really got over it. And I kick myself now that I didn't get out of him more of the story. I lived through it and I was there, but I was 4, and 5, and I just, it's hard. I don't remember, I don't remember the farm. I remember the 6 months we lived in Caracas before we actually got on a ship and came home. He was meeting with, Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary of Interior, Secretary of Treasury, trying to get some sort of protection, and couldn't get anything. But he never, I think he internalized it. He just, he just curled up inside.
Yeah.
And he never talked about it. So anyway, September 24, 1982, I come back to the farm full time, and he was certainly excited about it. We were, we started Polyface at that time, and then shortly thereafter, he got ill, and he passed away then in February of '88. So it took Teresa and I 3 years before we could kind of exhale. I think we're going to make it. Okay. Of course, he was an accountant, so he was keeping all the books. He was watching the books. And so now we're at 82 to 85, 86. Okay. And 87, he said, "You may not think we're doing well or you're doing well," because by that time I took over everything. He was bedfast a lot of the times and was not healthy. And so basically I was young, I was in my late 20s. And I took over everything, all the expenses, all the taxes, all of everything. He did keep the books, and he taught then my wife, Teresa, how to keep all the accounting and all the books. And so, and she still does it to this day. And he would say there toward the end, he would say, "You might not think this is whatever, making much, but he was an accountant. He did a lot of accounts for farmers in the area. I never knew who they were, confidentiality, client
Privilege.
I didn't know where he was going and who they were, but he would say, financially, if you look at the true, equity question, we're doing better than anybody. And that was when we were, I don't think we were making, probably weren't grossing more than, I don't know what, $150,000 a year. I mean, Teresa and I were living cheap, it was tight, but we didn't have debt.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have debt.
Yes.
And the neighbors, they were making taking in a lot more money, but they were buying fertilizer, buying seed, buying big, tractors with pretty green paint or whatever, and we were just rocking along. I mean, he was so innovative. In the 60s, most farmers would have a pickup truck.
Mm-hmm.
What farmer doesn't have a pickup truck? He said, well, a pickup truck, I can't take the kids, I can't take the family with me. This is before two-seaters were available. And so he bought from a neighbor for $75, he bought a 1957 four-door Plymouth sedan. This is before car inspection. Took all the seats out, took all the doors off, sat on a bucket. Okay, this is before seatbelt mandatory. But the room in an old 1957 Plymouth four-door was as big as a pickup truck.
Right.
And so he would go to see his tax accountant, with his bow tie and his suit and his adding machine, flapping in the breeze, driving with no doors, no windows, no nothing. And would get calves and feed and different things in that, and that served as a multi-use vehicle. And of course, to show how that apple didn't fall far from the tree. So a couple of years ago, we had a couple four-wheelers, and we had a celebrity guest one time wanted to come and visit. He was doing a concert in Virginia. We didn't know that he read my books or was a fan, but it turned out he was a fan. He said, "Could I come and visit?" Sure. So he comes to visit, and I have him sit on the back of the four-wheeler. We go out, through. Well, Daniel was just our son, and Eric, our apprentice manager. They were just mortified that I threw this celebrity on the back of a four-wheeler, and he's bouncing, and I'm going out through. They said, "You need a side-by-side." Okay. So I said, well, okay, but here's the side-by-side I want. I don't want a $22,000 John Deere Gator. That's what self-respecting farmers are supposed to have. So we bought a 1987 Ford Bronco. I took all the windows out, and so now it's like a pickup truck, but it's got a windshield and a roof, and 5-speed high-low range. $1,700.
Nice.
There you go.
Millions of them made. Parts are cheap,
Yes.
easy to work on, and that's my side-by-side.
I love it.
But see, since I'm not a self-respecting farmer, I don't have to have a self-respecting machine.
That's right. You get the Lunatic Mobile.
That's right. I get the Lunatic Mobile. That's exactly right. And so those are just things that we do. I'm so blessed that I grew up in a household that didn't care what anybody else thought.
Yes.
That is just such a blessing.
Yes.
To not feel like you got to keep up with the Joneses. You got to, have the pocketbook that every girl has. You don't have to have the fashion shirt. You don't have to go to the same recreation entertainment place, whatever. We truly embraced peer independence. And that is such a wonderful thing.
I love that message, and it resonates so much with us. So for a long period of time, I have a background in law enforcement. I got out of it, obviously, but for 10 plus years, despite the fact that we were making a decent amount of money, I drove a $900 1992 Mitsubishi Mighty Max pickup truck. And
that's embarrassing when you pull into a police precinct and everyone has
right. The culture is, hey, buy a $75,000 pickup truck, and I drove this for $900. It got me to and from.
It squealed like a pig when you started it.
It burned through motor oil like crazy. But I took an odd amount of pride in driving it because I knew that it was going to further us in our efforts toward achieving our own personal goals and dreams. So
That's right.
Again, this is why I love listening to you speak so much, because it resonates.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny when you were talking about you need to find a wife that will make bags out of the plastic bag. He started patting me because I've made all kinds of. I used to make stuff out of the rabbit hides, dog chew toys and stuff. I'd sell anything I could sell.
Yeah, that's right.
I could sell that. I was making headbands out of old clothing that the kids had skinned. If you skinned a hole in stretch pants for our little girls, I'd be cutting that up and making headbands and selling them. And
wear it out, use it up, make it do or do without.
And then you sell what scraps are left to somebody else.
Yeah.
This is a dog chew. Like anything, people will buy whatever.
Well, that's how quilting started.
Yeah.
Yes. Quilting started as a salvage for pieces of material.
Yeah.
And you make this beautiful, this beautiful blanket. Quilting.
It's like the flour sack dresses when they figured out that women were making dresses out of the flour sacks, so they started printing them on prettier material for the little girls. And people used to be so much more frugal and more creative, and it would be it's fun to watch a little of that come back. Yeah. It's like there's so much technology and we're losing so much of that artisan quality to our lives, but it's fun to watch people fight, especially the younger generation. So we want stuff that people have their hands on.
Yes. Right.
And so that's been really neat.
Well, it's like all cultural movements, the pendulum has to swing so far off balance before it finally starts to come back.
Yeah.
And I think literally it has swung so far. I was doing a chicken butchering demonstration in Tennessee a couple of years ago with David Schaefer at Featherman. And we had, 300 people there to see us on 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning. It was nuts. Early Saturday morning on a 2-day conference, and had all these people there. On a whim, he asked, he said, and they were pretty much all, 30-something couples with, 7 to 12-year-old kids, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Young families. And he asked for a show of hands. He said, so how many of you, when you were 16, ever thought that you would get up early on a Saturday morning to come and learn how to butcher a chicken? 2 hands went up in the whole crowd. 2 hands. And we just had this epiphany moment that we realized, all right, this is something that people, when they have kids and they're intentional in their thinking, they're coming to this at midlife. They're not coming to it as teenagers.
Right.
They're not even coming to it as 20s. They're coming to it when they're looking at these kids and they're looking out at society and they're seeing TikTok and they're seeing kids stuck in their basement and they're seeing, kids that can't look you in the eye, and all these things. And they're saying, whoa, it was like the moms in Northern Virginia in the last gubernatorial election during COVID when parents started realizing what their kids were getting in the public school, and they started looking over their shoulders. What? What is this?
Yeah, what is this?
And mama bears, in Northern Virginia, really, it was a big deal. And when Terry McAuliffe, the Democrat governor that was running for governor, went up there and he said, I don't think parents should tell anybody what teachers are teaching their kids. That was the end of it. Yeah. He lost that day. Because then when the blowback came from parents, he doubled down on it. Wow. He didn't say, oh, I misspoke. No. He said, no, this is absolutely right.
Well, they believe that. That's truly what they believe. I taught in the public school system, and I had my daughter, our firstborn daughter, 18 years ago, and I called from the hospital. When I called my principal, I said, I'm not coming back. And I'm never putting my daughter in the system. And we've homeschooled ever since. But
wow.
That's really what they think.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that.
I know. Well, it's the elitist mentality.
Yes.
You just sit down there and shut up.
Yep.
We've got the academic degree. We know how to do this, and we know what we're doing. And it's a very it's just a very top down, condescending approach. And so it's a big deal. And so that pendulum had to swing way out here before it came back. And I think we're seeing a lot of it swing back with
Yep.
our young, early 30s families.
Mhm.
That's definitely when it clicked for us. We're definitely one of those people. It's where
Yeah.
when we first
kinda-
started having kids, it was like, hey, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. We need to figure out a way of being more self-sufficient and doing the things that we know innately ingrained within us to be correct for not only ourselves, but for our kids. So,
You're more protective of your kids than you are of
yeah,
yourself.
it's a big wake-up call.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
as soon as you have kids, it's like stuff you didn't care about when you were young. You're like, whatever.
Right, suddenly everything
But
changes.
then when there's little lives depending on you, it's like, wait a minute, no, we need to make changes. We need to take education back. We need to take our food safety back. We need to take our food security back. So
Right.
we bought an acre to try to learn before we made the big leap. We thought we better learn on this. And then I got the whole CSA model from you, and I took on 20 members. And I thought, okay, I got 20 members and they prepaid, so I better grow a lot of food
Yeah.
on 1 acre. And we fed 20 families for several years. And that was like meat rabbits, meat chickens, eggs,
Wow.
artisan
that
bread,
is so wonderful.
and massive. We just went to the dollar store and we got those big laundry baskets. And
Mhm.
I would, it was $20
it was a
a
great
week.
deal. You got a lot of food for
$20 a
$20.
week. And they left with just,
Loads of-
you could even see their heads when they were,
Uh-huh.
the abundance.
Man, you
was-
made a lot of happy people.
did.
You made
Yeah,
lot
it was
of
a
happy
bargain.
people.
I'm looking at this thing of food like, this is a bargain. Here you
Yeah.
go. So
Yeah.
that was how we learned to do it. But it's like, if you can feed 20 families on an acre,
Mhm.
everybody can take some steps. I don't care where you live,
Yeah.
even if you're gardening in containers, to start growing your own food and just start learning in case you need it.
Yeah, my three, I have a 3-ingredient recipe for the urban sector. I do a lot of interviews, different things, and people ask, well, what do you tell a person in the city? What can they do? I mean, they don't have an acre.
Right.
What do you do? And so I have a 3-ingredient recipe for them. The first item is get in your kitchen. Get in your kitchen. We cannot have an accountable food system in a culture that so profoundly abdicates its participation in the system.
Mhm.
Everybody's sitting around saying, well, if they would just do this and they would just do that, and they're pointing fingers and saying, if they would just do that. Well, the fact is, farmers and the food system have always produced what people want to buy.
Mhm.
If people stop buying Cheerios won't be made. We don't
Right.
need a law. We don't need a government agency. We don't need anything. All we need is for people to quit buying Cheerios
Mhm.
or Coca-Cola, or name your poison. Okay, that's all it takes. And so getting in your kitchen where you start getting familiar. I mean, I had a mayor from Canada. He was from Ontario. He came down. His wife was in charge of the local food bank, and they had a farmer in the community who was a commercial butternut squash produce grower.
Huh.
Butternut squash. I mean, we're talking acres of
Yeah.
butternut squash. And so he had like a lot of these corporate commercial producers. He had a contract with the buyer, the company, to produce X number of butternut squash. Well, they had a terrible drought, bad year, and he didn't make his contract. He almost lost his farm over it because there were penalties if you don't produce this,
Wow.
blah blah blah. And so the next year, what he did, of course, he said, well, man, that's never going to happen again. So he planted 50% more than he thought he would need, even if it was a bad year, to fill the contract. Of course, what happened? Plenty of rain. It was in a year of abundance, and he had acres, tractor trailer loads of butternut squash in the field and no buyer.
Oh no.
And so this lady, food bank, her husband's the mayor, she says, hey, I'll get a crew together. We'll go out there and we'll gather them up and we'll, take them to the food bank. So she did. She got a truck and they got a crew and they loaded up this truck, took it in the food bank. Nobody would take them.
They didn't know what to do with them.
They didn't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
What do you do with a butternut squash? I know how to open a can
Yeah.
and heat it up, but I don't know what to do with a butternut squash.
That makes sense.
So get in your kitchen. We've got to begin. The biggest lie in the world is that we can change things without participating. We've got to participate in the system. So get in your kitchen. And buy unprocessed. That's the way you save your money, is buy a half a beef, not, a T-bone steak. Buy a whole chicken, not a boneless, skinless breast. Those kind of things. All right, that's number one. Get in your kitchen. Number two is grow something yourself. Just dabble in the mystery and majesty of life, even if it's just mung bean sprouts in a quart jar on the windowsill.
Yeah, those
All
are
right?
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, something. All right. Even if it's just a little vermicomposting bin under the kitchen sink.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But do something to just touch and connect with the mystery and majesty of biology, of life. So that's number 2. Number 3 is to sleuth out, vet, find, whatever you want to call it, your local food provenance. And what that means is you take your entertainment and recreational time and money budget for the year, and you invest it in sleuthing your provenance. Now, it might be local, it might be off the internet, it might be from other. But the point is to use that time for a year to opt out of the supermarket, opt out of Costco, opt out of Walmart, because those are the most vulnerable places.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a direct link, I mean, I'm thinking of the customers that we ship to across the country. As long as UPS runs, they got a pretty direct link. It's going directly from our farm to their doorstep, as long as UPS runs. Now, that's obviously more vulnerable than somebody local who comes in. I get all that, but it's a lot less vulnerable than all the human resources departments keeping everybody happy between the field and the fork through Costco warehouses and all that stuff. And so those are my 3 ingredients. Get in your kitchen, do something yourself, and invest in finding your food connection.
Yeah.
Those are 3 things that anybody can do
Mm-hmm.
anywhere, and they will fundamentally change the food system. I mean, we live in a time where the operative word is we need to defund. We want to defund the police, defund this, defund that. You know what? It's time to defund Walmart.
Yeah.
It's time to defund Tyson feeding you like family. It's time to
You're putting
defund.
bugs in the nuggets now.
Yeah. It's time to defund these things, and we can literally very quickly create an entirely different system.
Yeah. Now, the argument is that farmers markets and buying from people like you is too expensive and that the average person can't afford it. There's no way to feed the world on that. But I think that we proved in feeding 20 families on 1 acre, and we really only farmed 10% of that acre. It's like, okay, but maybe if someone can't afford to go and buy all this organic food or from, you can offset that by growing a lot of your own. And then maybe your land isn't big enough to do chickens, so you just buy your chickens from the farmer. And like you said, buy full birds, find someone else that's doing it and do it that way. But you can really offset your costs by growing it. And it gives your children such a sense of ownership over what they're putting in their body to watch a little kid plant a seed and watch it grow and get excited and watch the abundance of God of like 1 seed creates 2,000 seeds.
Well, and to touch the reality of life.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we're raising a generation that thinks they've got life at their fingertips. All I got to do is sit in the screen and punch my buttons, my thumbs.
Farmville.
And I can, if I'm driving a car in my, my game, and I run off the road and flip over and crash, in 5 seconds, the game gives me a new car and I'm back in business. Yeah. Well, I got news for you. That's not the way life is. And so we're raising these kids in a fantasy world with no reality.
Mm-hmm.
And when a kid grows a tomato and blossom end rot comes, or the tomato worm comes and kills that tomato plant, you don't sit back and in 5 minutes nature gives you another tomato plant. And so that reality moves you from hubris to humility, to realize, I'm not ultimately in charge here. There's something bigger than me going on, bigger than life, bigger than, and I think it's just germane. It's fundamental to an emotional and spiritual balance to interact with that cycle of life and death.
Absolutely.
And life and death.
Yeah. And it teaches you patience as well. We live in such an instant world, instant gratification and instant replacement of things. A kid drops their smartphone and their parents instantly order another one, and Amazon Prime brings it the next day. There's no repercussions. And watching, like you said, watching that happen. Or our son has taken over the rabbits. He's 9. That's his job.
Yeah.
They're all, unfortunately, he named them all. I'm like, you got to stop naming the food.
Yeah.
We got El Guardo, and he names them all after Brazilian bull riders. So we have a strange rabbitry going on now. Even the girls, we've got like Jose, and we're like, that's a girl rabbit. Yeah. It's fine. But he loves these rabbits so deeply, but he wants to be a farmer at the same time. So processing is very difficult for him. Last year I had to find pet homes for 42 rabbits that he named. I'm like, so I started raising Rex rabbits because they're easier to find pet homes and 4-H homes for them, because every once in a while he will pardon a litter. And I'm like, buddy, this is not how we farm. And so he's learning to kind of go over that, but you don't waste a bite of that rabbit. He raised that rabbit. He kept it warm. Sometimes he brought him back to life. And if somebody leaves a bite of rabbit on their plate, he's like, you eat Jose. He's like, and it gives him such an appreciation for that life. He values that life. Yeah. And
Well, the whole cost issue is, of course, the 2 most common questions I get asked when I do media interviews for regular media is, this is all warm and fuzzy, but can we really feed the world? That's number 1. Yeah. And number 2 is, even if we can we afford it? And so whenever anybody says, we can't afford it, I want to say, hey, quick, stop the conversation. Take me to your house. And let's take a look. And here's what we're not going to find. We're not going to find alcohol. We're not going to find Coca-Cola. We're not going to find lottery tickets, coffee. You don't really need coffee, believe it or not. We're not going to find Caribbean cruises, flat screen TVs, smartphones, boxed breakfast cereal, takeout, Uber Eats. All right, you can go down this list, and you show me a home, no tobacco. All right, you show me a home with none of that, and then let's sit down and talk. Is there poverty? Yes, there is, but it is so uncommon. And I know I'm being very politically incorrect here.
No, it's true.
But the truth is that people tend to have money for what they value.
Yes.
Right.
And you can tell a lot about what a person really puts value on by what they spend their money on. Yeah. And then so that's one thing. Okay. You don't need to go to the movies. Right. You don't need a Netflix. You really don't. Yep. You don't need a Netflix subscription. And so that's one element. And then the other is buy bulk, buy raw. I mean, who goes to farmer's market? I mean, farmers, at farmer's market, farmers would go into apoplectic frenzy of joy if somebody said, our house, we want to can green beans. Could you bring 2 bushels next week?
Yeah.
I mean, a farmer you'd have to do a CPR on the guy. I mean, because the only thing that sells at a farmer's market is a little baby food jar of pickled green beans with a little purple bow on it. So you can walk around and say, oh, I went to the farmer. This kind of guilt assuagement. I'm participating in the local food movement. I'm so wonderful.
We had a joke about that last weekend.
And I'm showing this off, and I can only get a little baby jar because my other hand is holding my coiffed, a labradoodle over here that I've just spent $100 getting groomed. Yeah. Right? I mean, oh, come on, give me a break. It is a
priority thing.
Sure,
a lot of times people say, I can't afford that. And it's like, no, you're not prioritizing that.
We always broke it down as, is this a like to have or need to have? If it's just something you'd like to have, then be done with it. Get rid of it. Eradicate it from your day-to-day life.
Yeah. Well, I think it's such a beautiful thing what your dad has built for you and what you have built for your son. Like or your children. It's so fun to watch you at a conference and then watch your son at a conference speaking and butchering and teaching. And like, what a proud moment that must be for you.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah. He's really, really good. And we homeschooled. Yes. And as he got older, he had requests from around the world come and start a pastured poultry operation in Argentina on my ranch, and he had all sorts of things, and he never wanted to do it. He just wanted to be there and be at home. Now we did a lot of local things. We sent him for a week at a time with some friends that were in construction, because I'm not a good carpenter. I'm not a good builder. And so, so Daniel went and was learned. So he's of course in charge of all our construction projects. He does all that. And so anyway, we were able to plug in some holes, of mine, with him. And he just never had I run into farmers, businesses, family businesses say, well, your kids have to go and they have to work for somebody else, in order to, and he never did. He just stayed there and just grew right into it. And we're very, very blessed, very fortunate.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really fun to kind of watch where Polyface goes and watch the generations grow and develop. Because, what an incredible thing. It's really rare that you meet anyone that grows food or lives in this homestead life that doesn't know Polyface Farms, Joel Salatin. And it all started with your dad and what he thought was a broken dream. And it turned into something so incredible and so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's still going.
Yeah. And to realize how far ahead of his time he was. This is in the late 50s and early 60s. We joked that he was organic before Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring. That was in 63, I think, right? And 61. And he's completely embraced, the non-chemical approach, the animal movement in the early 60s, before Gallagher, before Speedrite, before all these electric fence companies. He was so far. The longer I lived, the more I just realized how far ahead of his time he was. He was a hippie. In the good sense of the word.
Yeah.
The Back to the Land movement of the late 60s and 70s.
Right.
Vietnam, right?
Oh yeah, all the
Woodstock.
everyone started
the
living
beaded,
together.
bearded, braless. Time. Yeah.
It's a free spirit.
It was, and he embodied that.
Mm-hmm.
Long before them. In fact, growing up, the funny, religiously, we were pretty conservative, Christian believers, but all of our church friends just made all sorts of jokes and fun about us, being non-chemical and all. This was even before breastfeeding and Lamaze came back. Okay,
oh, yeah.
The Leche League, we didn't.
Yeah.
This is. And so, we were pummeled, if you will, and I don't mean that in such a negative way, but good-naturedly pummeled at church by all these folks that thought, not getting TV dinners and whatever Kraft mac and cheese, was just crazy.
Yeah, that was the wave of the microwave and the formula.
Absolutely. And so all of our farm friends, this is late 60s, early 70s, all our farm friends were these hippie dope smoking, Vietnam, hey, cool man. And I just grew up in this very eclectic.
Yeah.
And I just thought, this is normal. This is the way it is. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized how much tension there was between the conservative faith community, who viewed environmentalism as a pagan, almost a pagan thing, and it was the environmental movement viewed the faith community as a bunch of conquistadors, which they were. Okay. And those two camps. And so I've kind of spent a lot of my life both loving and irritating both of those camps, and feel like I've been able to now be a little bit of a bridge as the faith community through, I think, the homeschool movement.
Yeah.
You got to realize the homeschool movement started out as a very liberal thing.
Very.
In the 60s, if you were homeschooling, you were a liberal.
Yes.
Okay. And then you come up into the 80s and the 10 Commandments come out of the classroom, and we get these, Madeline Murray O'Hare, and we get these Supreme Court rulings. And then parents started saying, oh, man, we better take another look at this. And so today, if you run into a homeschooler, chances are they're a conservative, faith-based family, blah blah blah, right? And so that whole mystique demeanor in the movement inverted
Right.
over that time. And the same thing happened, I think, in the homestead movement. Homestead movement grew out of the late 1960s and 70s
Hippie culture.
Yeah, they were all living together.
Exactly.
Communes.
Yeah. The farm in Tennessee, and everybody was driving a VW van, and we called them sin bins, And,
I never heard that. I love that.
and it was where everybody was shacking up.
Oh,
in
yeah.
the back of their VW van, and so in 1970, if you were a homesteader, you were an anti-establishment Vietnam protester, all this. Now, you say you're a homesteader, chances are you're a conservative faith community. And so I just love it when the faith community and the conservative faith community co-opts. In one of the Gospels, I can't remember the exact verse, but Jesus said that the people of this world at this time are wiser than the people of light. And of course, he's speaking to his followers as the people of light. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. The conservative, problem with conservative is that they're conservative. They don't want to change. Right. And so they're slow to change. A lot of times they're actually slower to embrace what really needs to be done than liberals and progressives who see things and say, "Ooh, that's not very good," and of course then the conservative community backlashes because, well, if they're saying it, then
if they're environmentalists, then you can't be an environmentalist.
We can't be that.
Right.
So they throw out the baby with the bathwater,
right.
and are done with it. And so it's really just been interesting to see these two movements. And I think the homeschool and homesteading movement are absolutely related and kissing cousins. And it's fun to watch them mature into this as a societal element.
Yeah. It's been really interesting. And we came over from the Portland area where a lot of the homeschoolers and homesteaders and organic eaters still were more on that liberal side. So we did have a lot of people coming from Portland to buy from the farm, which was hilarious because we lived on 1 acre. But to them, it was the farm, and they would say, we're going to the farm, and we had sheep in our chicken coop and whatever we could do. And I said something about the abundance of God, and this girl's like, "You're like a weird hippie redneck." And so I had a hippie redneck made on shirts. I love that title. I'm like, I'm fully embracing this. But because I was conservative Christian, she went,
it was a turnoff.
"You're a redneck." But then she liked the hippie organic. She liked that kale she was getting that was all natural that she watched grow from seed. So yeah, it was funny. I like that title.
Do you consider yourself just a free thinking libertarian? Is that how you categorize yourself if you were forced to do so?
Yeah. I'm my handle is Christian Libertarian Environmentalist Capitalist Lunatic Farmer, and I've been courted to run for political office by Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Socialists, Greens, Communists.
Well, everybody, see,
I think you have to take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
You're a well-rounded, free-thinking individual.
Right. Yes. And I think people really understand. It resonates with people that I don't have an agenda except truth.
Yep.
Right.
And if it's truth, then I'm in. And sometimes that makes me sound like a raving socialist, and other times it makes me sound like a raving libertarian. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. I think it's sad that everyone feels as though you need to be placed within some kind of a confinement, a box, a category, what have you. But so appreciate that you are one of the rare people out there who actually do speak truth, because it's so important. And as I mentioned, it is becoming so rare nowadays. So part of what has drawn us to you. You want to start winding this down because we need to get Joel back to this
and
spot
let me say on that point, just so listeners don't jump to conclusions. I'm quick to admit that there are numerous political issues that I don't know.
Sure.
I mean, one, for example, is tariffs. I've watched both sides. I've studied it throughout history, and I'm confused about, and I don't have any problem saying I don't know. I don't understand.
Yes.
I mean, I'm in general, I'm a free marketer, but I also very much appreciate you can't just export everything to the country with the worst environmental and labor standards and have a fair playing field for anybody in business. Yeah. And so, you know, that's one that I don't know. And there are others, but I don't feel like I'm obligated to have a definitive position on everything that you might be able to argue about.
Yes.
Teach me. I'm ready to hear.
Yeah. So refreshing to hear that.
Yeah.
It really is.
It is. Yeah. I love it.
Anything else from you, Mama?
No, I don't think so. We so appreciate your time and your knowledge and your wisdom and your inspiration, even though you don't know that you're inspiring people sometimes, especially if you're not spend a lot of time on social media. But I mean, when you've got two random people meeting at a barbecue in Idaho, lighting up over your name, you know, you're reaching the world. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, what your family has built and the legacy that's going to continue.
Thank you. Well, it's been an honor to be with you, and till next time.
Yeah. Till next time. We appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Joel.
Really appreciate it.